You know, if you're lucky enough to have come up riding motorcycles and dirt bikes, then you have an understanding of what it takes to get into motorcycles and some of the gear and gadgets and the bike itself that you may want to stay away from. Maybe you already know kind of what you like, but when you come into it blindly, you're going to have a lot of decisions that need to be made. And kind of like myself, I came into it, I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of motorcyclists, and so I just kind of bought things based on the way they looked a lot of the time. And let's just be honest, that's not always the best way to go. And so today I'm going to tell you 7 of the things I really wish I knew before I started riding a motorcycle. So hopefully, if you're getting into this, maybe I can save you from a lot of the time, energy, and especially money that it takes to get into motorcycling. So I'd love to hear from you guys after the video. What are some things that you've learned maybe the hard way when it comes to motorcycling, and some of the things that you wish you knew before you started? Let's go ahead and get into it. So let's start with the bike first, because that's what's going to pique your interest initially. So when I bought a 2017 Iron 883, I thought, hey, it kind of fits the bill all the way around. I knew I wanted a cruiser. I wanted to kind of be somewhere in the middle. I knew how to ride a motorcycle, at least I thought I did. I'm going to touch on that a little bit more here in a minute. But it was in between, you know, your sports series, which I thought were just kind of ugly, and then like the 1200 Sportsters, right? So I'm like, oh man, this is going to be perfect, right? All blacked out, and it just matched everything that I thought I wanted back then. And without even having sat on the motorcycle at all, really, I just bought it, right? And so this is something that I've made the mistake doing, and it wasn't even the first time I made this mistake in motorcycling. So when I tell you that, you know, there's been some money wasted here and there when it comes to this stuff, I honest to God have, and so hopefully this will help you out. But that's one of the biggest things, man, and that is something you can do for free. Sit on the motorcycle. I've talked about this before, and I will continue to hopefully hammer this home because it's so important, man. When I got on that iron and I realized, man, these bars are kind of low, right? Man, the seat kind of sucks. Man, this thing could actually use a stage 1, you know, and just not realizing that right off the rip, I didn't find the bike that comfortable. And it was only really until I bought a Street Glide Special, my 2019 Street Glide Special, that I was like, oh wow, this is what comfort really is like on a motorcycle. But at the end of the day, not having even sat on the bike was such a stupid thing to do. And hey, I'm just keeping it real. That was a very stupid decision. And like I said, it wasn't even the last time I would do this, unfortunately. So just pay attention to the motorcycle that you want to buy. Don't necessarily tie yourself into one specific brand, right? There was Indians I rode after I bought the Harley. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much faster, right? And then, you know, there are other ways you can go. There's adventure touring, right, that you could get into, and it's actually a heck of a lot of fun. That's something that eventually down the road I would like to buy a kind of like a dual sport, I guess you could say, you know, something like a Pan America, or, you know, I like Harley Davidson, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of motorcycles out there. But even if you've made your decision, you kind of know what you want, just make sure you take a little bit of time and sit on that motorcycle and just tell yourself, hey, I'm not going to be like Headshot when it comes to this. I'm actually going to sit on the damn thing and make sure that overall it's comfortable, or make sure I know what I need to do with it once I actually buy the motorcycle. Now, here's something I really wish somebody would have told me when I first started riding motorcycles, and that is, you are going to drop this thing. It is going to happen 100% of the time. When you get your first bike, it's going to happen, right? And it's either going to be, you know, just kind of a lazy, I forgot the kickstand type of drop, or it may be a slow speed drop. It may be oh, I got target vision and I'm about to run to this ditch kind of drop. There's all kinds of drops that are going to happen or could happen, but you're almost guaranteed that one of them is going to happen. So with that being said, one of the first things that you should do and invest in is protection for your motorcycle. The other thing you want to consider is where you live, right? If you live in, let's just say, an apartment complex, you want to consider security for the bike when you're not around it. Now, I know a lot of insurance companies will actually charge you more if they know that the bike is not being kept in a garage. So you definitely want to take some extra precautions there if your bike is going to be around other people. Of course, getting some kind of cover for the motorcycle. This is something I did as well. So I bought one of those cheap little pop-up type of covers for it. And the first windstorm, I mean, it was like I don't know, like 15 to 20 miles an hour. It was definitely not no tropical storm or hurricane that came through. And this thing literally folded the interior little accordion looking brackets, that you kind of stretch it out and then you pop it up and all that. It bent those. And so one corner of that cover actually dropped down on the tank of the motorcycle. And so when I came home, right, one day I was like, oh, this thing's on top of the bike. Should be no big deal until, obviously I pulled that cover off and realized that there is a fist size dent in the side of my tank. And that's when I realized very quickly that motorcycle tanks are expensive. So protecting the bike, getting some kind of cover for it, but making sure that it's a sturdy cover. Or, like I said, if you live somewhere where you have to keep it outside in a parking lot, or you can't put up your own little private cover or whatever, you could always get an actual motorcycle cover, but getting some type of protection for that bike as well, so somebody can't easily steal it. There's also things that you can do to prevent that, like locking the forks and all of that kind of stuff. Now, here's the other thing that you should understand about motorcycle riding, and something I wish I knew beforehand, is that it actually takes quite a bit of strength and balance, and overall just decent health in order to ride a motorcycle, right? It can be physically demanding. Now, I'm not like the beacon of incredible physical male health, with a six-pack and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying you even have to be all of that in order to ride a motorcycle, but just understand that, when you're riding, right, there's certain factors that are going to tire you out that you would never think about in a car. Let's say you're going through a construction zone, right? And, there's a lot of the times through construction zones, you'll have a lot of loose rock and gravel and all of that kind of stuff. Well, in a car, you just kind of go through it and you're like, oh man, these rocks are kicking up on my truck or whatever, kind of chipping some of the paint away. Well, on a motorcycle, you're trying to make sure that, you probably stay in the friction zone, or watch out for, some of that loose gravel and stuff that can kind of kick your tire out every once in a while. And if you go through that an extended period of time, there was actually one part of I don't even remember the road because it was my first time out there, but when I was in Sturgis, there was actually a part of the road that they were working on, and it was kind of like that. There was a lot of loose gravel everywhere, and for that, I don't know, I guess if I had to take a guess, maybe 1 mile, probably less, it just felt like it took forever to get through that stuff. When you come to a stop, right, putting that foot down, making sure that it doesn't come out from up under you. So it can be physically exhausting to ride a motorcycle. If you get a lot of wind in your chest, right, that's something I talk about a lot. If you're on a longer road trip, that can physically exhaust you. And there's almost like a tolerance that you build up to motorcycling. It's kind of separate from like physical endurance. It's almost like motorcycle endurance. And that's absolutely a real thing. So it is something that you want to consider. If you find yourself on a couple long road trips and you're like, man, dude, I'm freaking just worn out, like way quicker than my buddies, it's possible that their endurance is just higher than yours. I found this out, on my first long road trip. I was, seeing all these other motorcycle YouTubers talking about, iron butt challenges and 1,000 miles a day. And I'm like, hey, I'm right there with them. But yeah, that takes a lot more than what you think. So anybody that's doing those types of challenges, dude, hey, full props, man, because it takes a lot of physical body strength and motorcycle endurance to be able to do those things. Now, here's something that I fortunately have not had to learn the hard way, but it is something that I keep in the back of my mind and something I want you to consider as well, no matter how long you've been riding, and that is your tire pressure. I have a buddy that rarely checks the tire pressure on his bike, and then when I, see him, I'm like, hey, checked the tire pressure recently? Sometimes I'll ask them that because I know what the answer is, and I'm just kind of trolling them a little bit, whatever. But it's like, no, no, no. And then we'll check them and they might be 5 or 8 pounds low, maybe 10 pounds low. But this is so crucial on your bike. Tires are very important, and you only got 2 of them compared to cars, obviously. So it is something that you want to take care of. Make sure that they're not worn out, and when you need to replace them, just replace them, right? Don't even mess around with it. It's something that I personally would not mess around with at all. Once you get some miles on there and the wear bar indicators are, starting to show or starting to get worn down, whatever, you want to make sure that you get those things replaced and keep a fresh set of rubber on your motorcycle, and make sure that in between changing tires that you also have that pressure set exactly where it needs to be. Now here's the other thing about motorcycles, and something that I found out very quickly. When I bought that Iron 883, the very first Saturday, I wanted to take it to work. And so I've told this story before, but I think it highlights just how quickly you can get thrown into the swing of things on a motorcycle when it comes to the weather. Well, I had checked the weather multiple times that morning before I left. I was like, it's spotty showers, but I think we'll be good. But then as soon as I hit one of the major roads that I took to work, the sky fell. And I had a dump truck behind me. We're going 35 in what is normally a 55. I was freaked out. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I was absolutely freaked out. I didn't trust the tires. This was my first motorcycle ride essentially in 10 years. And I didn't have any gear, right? I had no rain suit, no nothing. It took about 6 hours for Mrs. Hegshot to bring me up some fresh clothes because she actually had something going on the day with the boys. And it was a bad situation all the way around. I think I had, an inch or 2 inches of water in each one of my boots. So sloshing around like that all day was not fun. I got caught in one last year. Last year and the year before that I can remember. And sometimes, man, these storms are just intense. It's always more intense on a bike. Everything is against you, right? And so, standing water is something you want to watch for in a car. You really want to watch for it on a motorcycle, right? How the rain feels when it hits you in the face going 60 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. It does not feel well. So if you're somebody that doesn't wear a full face helmet and you run into the rain, I'm sure some of you guys will be able to attest to this. It doesn't feel great. Is it the end of the world? No, but it is something that you're going to want to consider. And being friends with a weather app, a good trusted weather app on your phone, is definitely something you want to consider. But it's not just the rain, right? Snow, ice, the heat, that's something that we deal with a lot down here in the South. And the high temperatures ruin rides for me more often than anything else, right? We don't have enough cold weather down here to really say that like snow or ice or anything ruins our riding season, because you can essentially ride all year long around here, right? And I have ridden in some really cold weather down here. I've taken that opportunity to see what it's like, and you'll learn some tricks to keep your hands warm, because that's another thing that you absolutely need to know. Your hands are crucial. Your feet equally as crucial, right, when you're on a bike. So you want to keep those things warm at all costs. But either way, temperature can ruin your motorcycling experience. If you're wearing a helmet, it's super hot outside, it just becomes kind of miserable sometimes, right? So there are some things that you want to consider when it comes to the weather, and it can really affect how great your experience is, or, there's just going to be times where you have some really bad days on the bike when it comes to weather, but all of your senses are going to be awakened. If you think, man, I think I lost my sense of smell, or, all of that kind of stuff, yeah, you can throw that out the window, because every single sense that you have will be heightened as soon as you get on a motorcycle, and they will be heightened exponentially more when you get caught in weather that is uncomfortable to you. The other thing I wish somebody would have told me is how much money you're going to be spending on helmets. Now, you could buy once, cry once, right? Or you could kind of go the cheap route and then go with a better helmet after that. But regardless, I think most people are going to end up with a few helmets, right? It is what it is. Whether you just simply want an upgrade, or you find one with better features, or you think maybe the Snell rating is just way better, or ECE, and you're like, dude, I want to go with that as opposed to DOT, even though DOT has some stringent tests and guidelines that they have to follow for impact resistance as well. There's just a number of different factors that will lead to you every once in a while, every couple of years, purchasing a new helmet, most likely anyways. When I came back to riding, my first helmet was a Harley Davidson helmet, and I kind of chuckle about it now because there's that video that floats around that's like the buddy's filming his friend, and his friend just bought a motorcycle, but then he's got the chaps and the gloves and the jacket, and they're, you know, his buddy's like, oh man, they sold you all that? He was like, yeah, I just told him, give it all to me. He's like, I really think I found my inner self, you know, by buying all of this stuff, to be quite honest with you. So it's pretty hilarious, but you can spend a lot of money on this. You probably will. I would definitely stay away from cheaper helmets, man. You know, they need to at least be DOT rated, but you also have comfort. That's a part of that. Wind noise to an extent. I don't think there's any helmet out there that's necessarily totally quiet, right? It's just impossible, but there are some helmets that are louder than others. Transitional visors, that's something that somebody on Heckshot Nation brought up. By the way, if you're not a part of that, you should absolutely check it out. It's a fantastic community that we have that's built off of this community right here, so go over and check it out. I'll link it down below. But somebody said transitional visors, so that way if it's nighttime, it's going to lighten up a lot for you, and then when it's obviously bright outside, it'll darken up for you, as opposed to carrying multiple visors. That's something that you can do as well. But you will spend a lot of money, most likely, on helmets, but this is money that's well worth it, to be quite honest with you. But go into a store and try a bunch of them on, and you'll see that will make a difference. Plus, there's things you can do afterwards that make a difference, like thicker or thinner liners, etc. And the last thing I want to talk about here is how important it is to not upgrade your bike too soon. Remember that most motorcycles are going to be way faster than what you'll experience in a car, right? But even the slower motorcycles, like that 883 that I've referenced, right? That motorcycle, I don't even remember if I could really I think I was just starting to get the hang of a figure eight before I got rid of it, and I went directly to a Street Glide Special. But the sooner you get rid of that motorcycle, the more you're going to put yourself behind the curve when you get a bigger one when you're doing slow speed stuff. Slow speed is so crucial to almost everything we do, even at higher speeds, right? Clutch control and brake control, and learning how to swerve, and there's a lot that goes into it, right? And so all these things are important. You're going to find yourself in positions where you have to do a U-turn, right? So do you want to just pop a U-turn, or do you want to kind of do a 25-point turn on your motorcycle? That's really up to you. Both ways will get the job done. One just looks a little bit better. So this put me behind when I started training, and I can remember the first U-turn that I attempted on that Street Glide Special, and guess what I did? I tipped it immediately. I was actually doing it on a course. It was at a DMV, and I did it on a course, and one side of the course, there's a big ditch, right? And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to. Now, keep in mind, just a couple months prior, I had passed this course with flying colors on my Iron 883, right? And you got to do a U-turn in those, right? So I knew how to do a U-turn on that bike. First one on the Street Glide Special, I saw that ditch, and I saw that I was running out of road, and frickin', tipped over. And that was a better scenario than my 1,000-pound bike ending up in that ditch, of course. But at the same time, you're not going to be doing yourself much of a service if you upgrade out of that bike too soon. If you're like, oh yeah, this is too small for me, after a couple months getting rid of it. Trust me, not only will it cost you a lot of money, but it's going to put you behind as far as training, because when you have that smaller motorcycle, you can really take advantage of that, get the feel of it, and how all your U-turns and figure eights and slow speed maneuvers and all that stuff works on a smaller bike. You graduate up to a bigger one, it's going to be a little bit of transition there, but it won't be nearly as bad on you. So just don't upgrade that bike too soon. So there you go, man. Hopefully this stuff will help you to save a lot more money. And I'm willing to put myself out there and the mistakes that I've made, because it will hopefully help somebody out there save a lot of money, time, frustration, and make your riding experience that much better. Let me know what you think, and any important things that you've learned, maybe aside from this, or if you want to add on to what I've said here. And again, come over to Heckshot Nation, where we got a lot of very cool things going on. Ad-frees, exclusive videos, early access, and some really cool other stuff that we're doing over there as well. Come check it out. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.